Welcome to the Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hammel, back at you with another episode. This week we are talking about cultivating communication. Huge. Number one reason for conflict, number one way of getting things done is communication. It is what makes the world go round. So let's get into it. How do we cultivate communication? First of all, let me just say communication is not just about words. It's about action. It's about body language. It's about facial expressions. All of these, everything that we do when we're trying to connect with another human being communicates. And we need to know that. And so how do we cultivate genuine, authentic communication, right? So I've got a couple of things to help me respect your time, stay on topic, right? And really, if you've ever had, maybe you're the only one like me, you've ever had those arguments in the shower with somebody, and then when you get there, you chicken out, you don't say those things, and maybe it's out of respect, maybe it's the right sort of thing. So how do we have the courage to really have good, authentic communication? So here's a couple of ground rules, personal rules to live by, if you will. Number one is you've got to keep the main thing the main thing. So many times in our conversations with people, whether it's conflict or just trying to say a point or express an idea, we get distracted by things that can offend us, things that are maybe somebody's verbal bombs of things they throw in there just to stir up the pot, or maybe they're speaking from a place of hurt or offense or whatever the case is, and then we get distracted. Well, why are you so harsh with this, or why are you so rude with that, right? What we have to do if we're trying to cultivate communication is we've got to keep our main thing our main thing. How do we do that? We got to stick to the heart of our issue. What is our goal that we want to see out of this conversation? And many times, one of the tools that you could use is stating it. This is the goal I have from this conversation. As soon as you do that, it gives you permission to bring the conversation back to center, back to focus. Whoa, wait. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to dig into you. This is my goal from this conversation. Again, whether this is in a romantic relationship with a spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case is, whether this is in a parental conversation with your child, whatever the case is, you go, this is the goal I have to get out of this conversation. Wait, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm not trying to argue with you. This is what I want to get out of this conversation. When you lay that out there and when you speak that out, it helps them know where you're coming from, what you're trying to get out of the conversation. And then when anything gets you sidetracked or off track, you can go, wait a minute. That's not my goal. That's not what my objective is. My goal is to get this out of it. My goal is that we can figure out where we're spending Thanksgiving. My goal is we can figure out what we're eating for dinner. My goal is that we can figure out how to tackle this project. That's my goal. Not to criticize how things have been done or this or that, right? So this is cultivating communication. This is mature communication moving forward. Secondly, I have to own, your failure of action is my failure of communication. Many times, what happens is we have expectation of someone's behavior, an expected outcome, and we get disappointed that mark or that expectation wasn't hit or wasn't achieved. You didn't do what I was hoping you would do. You didn't accomplish what I was hoping you would accomplish. Most of the time, the reason for someone's lack of action is our failure of communication. We are filled with assumptions rather than communication. We're filled with expectations rather than a clear guide or a clear roadmap of what we are expecting, right? That sort of thing. So here's how you do that. You've got to be clear about what you're hoping for. You've got to be clear about what you're asking. And when it comes to cultivating communication, here's how you fight that, or here's how you conquer that. We have to, when we're having those hard conversations, when conflict is possible because an expectation is missed or something of that nature, we have to resist the fight or flight mentality when we're confronting a missed expectation or a missed hope or goal. When there's disappointment involved in this communication that we need to have, we have to resist the fight or flight trigger that happens in our lives or in our hearts or in our emotions or in the chemical balance of our bodies. This fight or flight shuts down communication. And so you have to conquer that. How do you conquer that? There's a couple of things that you have to do. You have to battle personal assumptions. Here's how our brains work. Our brains are a magnificent tool, instrument, muscle, but they also sabotage us, right? Our brains are geared for assumptions. Here's what our brains do. To conserve calories, to conserve energy, they jump to conclusions. Now, I know that many of us, you're like, how does that help us? Well, instead of having to think through things, our brain just says, how can I automate that? How can I automate that decision? How can I automate that emotion? How can I just get there more quickly and save and conserve? What's the most efficient way? And so the most efficient way is by remembering what happened last time or in a previous time and then jump to that conclusion, jump to that assumption. And so our brain, in trying to make things more efficient, more quickly, to speed things up, jumps to conclusions for us, and it shuts communication down. I know. In trying to help us, our brains hurt us and they blocks communication and getting things actually done and that connection that we're trying to have with a coworker or a spouse or something like that. So how do you stop assumptions? Number one way to stop assumptions and to cultivate communication is to ask more questions. And so you say, brain, you don't have permission to jump to that assumption. Let's ask another question. Let's ask another question. How did you come to that conclusion? Try not to say it in a way that like, what were you thinking? Because that immediately puts someone on the defensive and it causes their brains to automatically tense up and release chemicals and get into that fight or flight mentality or mode. But ask authentic, genuine questions, trying to cultivate communication that will pull the answers out to stop your brain from assuming stuff so that you can connect with that person on a real level, on a mature level, on an authentic level that will cultivate communication in moving the relationship or the objective or the goal or the reason you're having this conversation at all forward. You've got to ask questions. Now, the key rule to asking these questions is they have to be real questions, not assumptions. We all have been in that spot where we've asked a question that we thought we already knew the answer to, of what were you thinking coming in late? What were you thinking doing this? And our brains have already looked for, we know what the answer is. And so you're 3 steps ahead of, well, when he says this, I'm going to say this. When she says this, I'm going to say this. We're not really asking questions for authentic communication. You got to stop. And you got to start asking real questions that say, okay, help me understand. Help me see from your perspective. Help me know what was going on. Help me understand this, right? When you start asking real questions, it stops your brain from assuming, stops your brain from jumping to conclusions, stops your brain from going into that automatic mode, which is triggering other things, and then it allows you and opens up and it causes you to cultivate real communication. Next thing that I put down here is that we've got to stop, look, and listen. It sounds like it should be, a little kid rap song, or maybe it was. Maybe I heard this in elementary school. But we got to stop, look, and listen. The key to cultivating communication is we've got to create a safe place for the hard talks. We've got to create a safe place for the difficult conversations. If you're constantly in conflict, if you're constantly throwing jabs, if you're constantly belittling people who don't see things your way, you're not a safe place to have communication. And you got to understand that if you want to get to that, it's going to take some time for people to trust again. But creating a safe space for hard conversations. How do you create that safe space? Again, I go back to lay your motives out up front. I hope to gain this out of it. If you put your motives on the table, you immediately disarm and create a safe space to have hard conversations. Because now I know what you want out of this conversation. Let's dig in. Let's do the hard work. Let's roll up our sleeves, so to speak. And sorry, I bumped the microphone there. But let's roll up our sleeves, so to speak, and jump in and do the hard work to get the communication where we need to go. The other thing is reiterate to the person you're talking to. Oh, I see how you would see it from that perspective. Oh, I didn't mean for it to sound like that. I didn't mean for it to look like that. Here's what I was hoping to. And so by having these kinds of talking points and perspectives on things, you would create the opportunity or the safe place to have those meaningful conversations, which really moves the relationship forward, moves the goals forward, moves the objective forward in whatever it is that you're cultivating with this person. Again, this could be in a romantic relationship, marriage, this could be in a parental, this could be in a coworker on the job, this could be a neighbor, right? There's all kinds of places where we can cultivate communication, because usually we are limiting to ourselves to assumptions and motives and posture, body language that we're reading from people, and our brain lies about all of those things. Our brain says, if this, then that. If their arms are crossed, then they're grumpy, they're closed off, right? And our brain starts reading all these things. The only way to overcome that and really have communication is to ask more questions, create a safe space, put your motives on the table, and really, really lean in to cultivating that communication. I'd love to hear your story of breakthrough, someone you've been challenged to communicate with, someone that you've had difficulty with, but you start putting in those tools. Also, in the links, if you're watching on YouTube, we just announced this, and we have a website that's coming. Oh, I'm so close to being able to announce that. There's a great tool resource that I want to tell you about. It's called Crucial Conversations. Incredible book. It's got about 5 authors, got a red cover. We'll put it in the Amazon link for you in the YouTube description down below. But here's the thing. Crucial Conversations. It's a powerful tool. Read that book. Get that book. It's amazing. It will help you unpack all of these things in cultivating communication. Hey, thanks for listening today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the episodes. Go back and watch or listen to our previous ones. We'd love to hear your comment. We'd love to hear your cultivated journey. We'd love to hear any ideas that you'd like for us to unpack, show ideas or topics, that sort of thing, because this is a journey we are all taking together. So again, we're on Facebook, Instagram, @TomHammel, Twitter, @TomHammel, YouTube, @TomHammel, where you can follow us on all of the platforms, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, on all of those things. Subscribe to our podcast. We'd love for you to join us. Thanks again for watching or listening. Thanks for checking us out today on the Cultivation Podcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the incredible content that's coming your way. Also, in the comment thread below, be sure to put your comments, your feedback, your story. We want to hear that. We want to hear from you. We read those. We respond to those. We journey together in this cultivated life.